Hello, you're watching Sightline. Today we're talking to Ms. Enerel Dambiinyam, Head of Collections Description Services of Columbia University Libraries, who is with us from New York City on Zoom. Good morning, Enerel. Thank you very much for joining us on Sightline.
Good evening, Didra. Thank you for having me on the show.
It's our pleasure to be talking to you. So, Enerel, you started your career 17 years ago as a catalog librarian at Cleveland Public Library, and now you're the head of Collections Description Services at Columbia University Libraries. And also, you're the former president and current nominating chair of the New York Technical Services Librarians, which is associated with the division of the world's largest library association, the American Library Association. So could you briefly tell us more about your career path and also explain the importance of cataloging and how cataloging is done?
Thank you for the question. My career grew out of curiosity to broaden my horizon and utilizing my foreign language skills. As a young child, I was an avid reader, and my father had the most wonderful library that included Russian classic sets from Chekhov to foreign classics such as Balzac, Stefan Zweig, Sir Conan Doyle, and Russian translation. During my middle school years, my classmates would ask for a book to read. I used to lend a book and keep a log of checked out books. So in a way, subconsciously, I was preparing to be a librarian. But the first time when I visited Cleveland Public Library, I was amazed at the collections, especially the foreign languages department, and that I can just browse through the open shelves, which was very new concept to me at that time. And I started out as a part-time library assistant at Cleveland Public Library's John J. White Special Collection. And during that time, I implemented Dust Jacket Project by reorganizing materials on chess dating from 1890 to 1985, using library services software as well as Slavic and Indo-European language skills, and provided extensive in-person and telephone reference services to Russian and Hungarian patrons finding the information needs. Soon after that, I decided to pursue my graduate studies in library and information science. As you mentioned, I started my career as a professional cataloger 17 years ago. I started at Cleveland Public Library, where I learned the importance of cataloging. In my role as a catalog librarian at Cleveland Public Library, I help provide access to information to users from Cleveland's diverse community by performing original and complex copy cataloging, subject analysis, bibliographic management, authority work, and classification of English and non-English library resources using national and local standards. The cataloging is foundation of library because as catalogers, we organize information in such a way as to make it easily accessible. Also, one can say that cataloging is at its heart about service. Cataloging librarians provide customer service through their work to thousands of users who use library catalogs and databases on a daily basis, as well as supporting future library users. Catalogers use cataloging standards and their expertise in particular area or subject to create reliable catalogs. And these catalogs help enhance library users' search experience.
So it was very wonderful to listen about your career progression and also to get to know what cataloging is about. So Enerel, you worked overseas for many years, and we know that you've done a lot to support Mongolian librarians. So, for example, recently in November, you and Dr. Saruul-Erdene Myagmar, the Mongolian specialist in the Asian and Middle Eastern Division at the Library of Congress, led a month-long online training program called Cataloging as a Public Service, organized by the American Center for Mongolian Studies and the National Library of Mongolia. So the first session of the training program has concluded, and the second session is scheduled to be held in person soon. So can you please tell us about the outcomes of the training and also what topics were covered?
There were about 110 registered participants from various libraries across the country, and we're very pleased with the training outcome due to many positive feedbacks we have received. During the 5-week online training, mostly due to COVID restrictions, we couldn't be there in person, but we were able to cover the basics of MARC, which is machine readable cataloging standards. Standards are set of digital formats for description of items cataloged by libraries. We also introduced NAR, which is Name Authority Record, and FAST, which is Subject Heading, Faceted Application of Subject Terminology, which is a simple to learn and apply. And lastly, we also covered Dewey Decimal Classification. We really wanted our participants to have hands-on experience. Therefore, we worked with actual books while explaining the cataloging standards and what works for our Mongolian library users. You see, when you catalog an item, one has to think from the user point of view. For example, if I were looking for a book or an article on 16th century Mongolian history, I would enter Mongolian history, 16th century in my search book, in a search box. So, and then I would retrieve the relevant information, and that information is described by catalogers provided. So in MARC language, we would add Mongolian, history, 16th century.
So when will the second session for the training of Mongolian librarians be held? And also, how many sessions will there be in total?
I hope the second session will be sometime in spring. We also hope to continue having cataloging sessions based on our Mongolian colleagues' needs. What we learned from the previous training is that we need to focus on cataloging standards and terminology in Mongolian, implementing classification system, subject cataloging. This is the process of documenting and categorizing bibliographic resources by subject or topic that relates to the information and resources provided. And also authority control, which is the process. This is the process organizes bibliographic resources by the unique spelling of their title or subject to ensure both accuracy and consistency for names and subject header in resource description. So these are the main, really the nitty-gritty of the cataloging. So we would like to focus on that more in depth.
So you said that 110 librarians took the first session of your online training. And so for other librarians who could not participate in the training, and also for the new generation of librarians, are you going to give the same training again in the future?
Our sessions were recorded, so anyone who couldn't participate at the time, they were able to go back and see our recordings. So it's in a way becomes like a manual, for them to go back. And I remember one of our students who was really wonderful. She said, in the beginning when we had our first session, she said she didn't understand. It was really theoretical, but almost toward the end, when they watched back the video of the recording, they said it was just wonderful. All of a sudden they could understand the mark fields and with the fixed fields. So I think it was really, really good to have that tool, for them to go back, and hopefully all other sessions will be the same. Recorded, they can always go back, refer back to the things they missed out or didn't understand. So I think it's really nice of American Center for Mongolian Studies to have that platform.
Okay, so anyone can watch the training videos, the online training, on the ACMS website.
Correct.
So that's wonderful. And the next question is, in 2013, the National Library of Mongolia became the first library in Mongolia to join the OCLC, the Online Computer Library Center, which allowed the library to share its rich collection through the WorldCat online catalog, and all of which happened thanks to your initiation and hard work. And could you please elaborate on this important milestone for Mongolian libraries?
Ever since I left my home in UB, Mongolia, to pursue my university studies and my career as a librarian, I've always looked for ways in which I could contribute meaningfully for the professional and academic advancement of librarianship in Mongolia. As I met with librarians across the country, giving presentations and leading workshops in Ulaanbaatar, I observed a compelling need for implementing national cataloging standards and for creating a strategic plan that would broaden the role of Mongolian libraries in providing access to valuable information. and which is why I applied for the American Center for Mongolian Studies Library Fellowship. And I strongly felt that the National Library of Mongolia should be the first library in Mongolia to introduce the OCLC online cataloging system in the country. The WorldCat is international online catalog that helps OCLC members share resources, reduce costs, and increase their visibility and impact in the communities they serve. The main impact of this project was providing access to and training on OCLC so that library community in Mongolia can begin to contribute to this international online catalog and shares unique resources with researchers and general public throughout Mongolia and worldwide. And secondary impact of the project was how this training and membership had increased the world perspective of individuals involved. In corresponding with my colleagues at National Library of Mongolia, they have reported that training has had a positive impact in their professional lives. And so that project encouraged them to seek out more training in cataloging and learn English for library professionals. I will add that one of the most important accomplishments of my fellowship, of course, was negotiating OCLC membership and access to OCLC connection free of charge on behalf of the National Library of Mongolia, with the help and support of Andrew Wang, who was Vice President of OCLC Asia Pacific. And this agreement provided that National Library of Mongolia use of OCLC connection service and allowed National Library of Mongolia contribute up to 1,000 titles on WorldCat.
So you mentioned training was held, and I believe that you were the one who conducted the trainings.
Correct. It was part of the contract that I would train the librarians on the RDA standard, which is the cataloging standard we use currently. And it was really, really eye-opening experience.
So you successfully negotiated and made it possible for Mongolian National Library to join OCLC's membership free of charge. But however, the duration was for 1 year. Is it
Yes.
right?
Within the year, they would contribute up to 1,000 titles. So I started the project in, I believe in September of 2012. I'm sorry, 2013. And it would go end in September 2014. So exactly, it was about a year.
So the question is, does the National Library still hold the membership currently?
Not currently. So you have to renew the memberships all the time. And I believe a couple of years ago, there was a talk about renewing the membership so that, they can use and contribute their, cataloging records, share with the world. So I do hope at some point they will become members again and to share the unique resources, especially Tibetan collection. It's well known, and that there's so many Tibetan manuscripts that need to be cataloged and digitized. So I think it'll be a great project.
Exactly. So you're very eager to contribute to Mongolian libraries as much as you can. And another big contribution that you've made was getting the official translation rights and working as a translation editor of the abridged Dewey Decimal Classification and Relative Index book. And the Dewey Decimal system is the most popular book classification system in the world, and it is used in more than 200,000 libraries in 135 countries around the world. So for a person who has worked at world-class libraries and who has got this rich experience in the field, how would you assess the development of Mongolian libraries? What kind of book classification system are used in Mongolia, and also are they up to date? And what changes do you expect to see in the future?
I know that some libraries still use BBK, which is Библиографическая классификация, which was done it's a Russian, besides Dewey. And classification system in libraries generally play two main roles. First, they facilitate subject access by allowing the user to find out what works or documents the library has on a certain subject. And secondly, they provide a known location for the information source to be located. For example, where it's shelved, you just go in the shelf and you find by the call number, by a classification system. And I personally believe that would be better to use Dewey classification system because it has a number for all subjects, including fiction, and most importantly, Mongolian libraries will have a chance to have one unified classification system that will work for each libraries. I mean, of course, they can still use BBK as their local call number. I mean, we use here currently at Columbia, we use Library of Congress classification, and there are some collections that have Dewey Decimal, so we have kind of mixed collection. But it is good to have just one unified. And then it's also, I've noticed that Mongolian publishers, now they started to put the Dewey call number in the books, which makes it easier for a cataloger than to, when the cataloging book, they can just look up the call number at the subject heading, and it's on its way on, to the shelf.
So how many of Mongolian libraries are using the Dewey Decimal system, which is the most popular one?
I really don't recall the number, but I know the academic libraries use the Dewey classification. The National Library of Mongolia as well uses the Dewey in conjunction with BBK. So that's what we learned during our online training, that some of our participants were reluctant to use Dewey, or they were confused when and how we should use the BBK. So, and I said it depends on each institution. They have their own local policies and procedures, and then they can still use it, code it differently. But I think really good to have one standardized and unified classification system as Dewey.
So apart from the book classification system, what other changes do you expect to happen in the future, both in Mongolia and also worldwide?
In terms of Mongolian libraries, I think we need to get together, really have the strategic plan of how we're going to move forward into 21st century. We need to adopt cataloging standards. And in order to do that, we need to have also the translation rights to RDA, which is our standard, and have that translated into Mongolian, so everyone can better understand, so in the same page. And it also begins in the school, library schools. They can give a good foundation when they teach classes, but really the application and knowledge begins at work, when you really start creating records, and then you get a more affiliated, or you get familiar how to describe a book. And when I say that, it's cataloging, and also it's an art of describing. We need to give access points so that users can find. For example, when I talk about access points, it's the name, correct spelling, the subject, call number, all those things encompasses as a whole cataloging. So yes, we really need to get the cataloging standards, and then we can move forward.
Okay, thank you very much for talking to us, Enerel, and it was a great pleasure to have you on our program. And I hope you have a great day ahead, because it is still morning in New York City. And also, when you arrive in Mongolia to give the second session of your training in spring, I really hope to see you and talk to you in person.
Definitely, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for having me on the show, and it was such a pleasure. Thank you.
You've watched Sightline. Today we talked to Ms. Enerel Dambiinyam, Head of Collections Description Services of Columbia University Libraries, on Zoom. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.